This precaution, having designated fire tenders throughout the night, is only implemented during the most dangerous cold snaps. It means less rest for everyone, but ensures the fire never diminishes to life-threatening levels. Your mother supervises the preparation of the evening meal, which is deliberately more substantial than the morning's reduced rations. Before extreme cold, calories are survival tools. The meal features preserved meat, fat and barley with dried berries added for their sugar content, quick energy to fuel the body's internal furnace. Eat everything, she instructs. No leftovers tonight. As you eat, your grandmother shares traditional wisdom about surviving extreme cold. Knowledge passed down through generations of Arctic dwellers. Keep your breath inside your clothing, she advises the children. Pull your hood forward and breathe into your chest, not the open air. Your breath is warm. Use it twice. This practical technique, creating a microclimate within clothing using exhaled breath, has been validated by modern cold weather experts. It's one of countless small adaptations that collectively meant the difference between life and death. If you must go outside, rub snow on your face first, she continues. It sounds wrong, but it prepares the skin for the cold shock. Again, this counterintuitive practice has scientific merit. It stimulates blood flow to facial tissues and creates a temporary protective layer that actually reduces frostbite risk. Vikings developed these techniques through observation and experiment, then preserved them as oral tradition. As twilight approaches, bringing the most dangerous cold with it, your father organizes the night watch rotations. Extra sentries are posted, not just for wolves, but to monitor for anyone in distress from the cold. Hypothermia can make people confused and irrational, leading to dangerous behavior like removing clothing or wandering outside. Watch each other, he emphasizes, especially the old and young. If someone seems confused or stops shivering after shivering heavily, alert us immediately. This understanding of hypothermia symptoms reflects sophisticated medical knowledge. Vikings recognize the paradoxical late-stage sign when dangerously cold people suddenly feel warm and stop shivering long before modern medicine formalized this understanding. The longhouse settles in for what everyone knows will be a brutal night. The central fire burns higher than usual, casting flickering light across worried faces. Outside, the temperature continues to plummet through the smoke hole. Stars appear with unusual clarity, a beautiful but ominous sign of extremely cold, dry air. "Will the wolves attack tonight?" asks your little sister, as your family arranges sleeping furs on the platform. "No," your mother answers confidently. "Wolves are smart enough to shelter in killing cold. Even they know when to respect winter's power." This is likely accurate. Wolves typically den during extreme temperature drops, preserving energy rather than hunting. Nature enforces truces between predators and prey when survival demands it. As full darkness falls, your grandmother begins another tradition specifically for extreme cold nights: the warmth tale. This is a special category of story designed to create psychological warmth through imagery and memory. Modern science would eventually confirm that visualizing warmth can actually affect perceived temperature and comfort. "Remember the summer solstice fires," she begins, her voice carrying through the longhouse, the flames leaping higher than three men standing on each other's shoulders. "Remember the heat on your faces so intense you had to step back. Remember the sweat on your skin, the warm earth beneath bare feet." Everyone listens, eyes closed, conjuring these sensory memories. The technique works. You can almost feel phantom warmth from the remembered midsummer celebration. "Remember the bathing in the lake after harvest," she continues. "The water still holding summer's heat, the sun baking the rocks where we laid our clothes, the steam rising from wet hair in the afternoon light." The imagery grows more vivid with each description. This isn't merely distraction, but a sophisticated psychological technique for enduring physical hardship. The mind is enlisted as an ally against the cold. As the night deepens, the watch rotation begins. When your turn comes in the pre-dawn hours, you bundle in extra layers and take your position near the fire. Your job is simple but crucial. Maintain the flames at the prescribed height, neither too high, wasting precious fuel, nor too low, risking dangerous cooling. The longhouse at night is a landscape of shadows and soft sounds. Breathing, snoring, the occasional cough or murmur. The livestock shift in their makeshift pens. The fire pops and hisses. Beyond the walls, the killing cold holds the world in its grip. Your watch partner is Eric, the young man who nearly fell to the wolves earlier. He's still shaken by the experience, and Night Watch gives you a chance to speak privately. I froze, he admits quietly, staring into the flames. When I saw them coming, I couldn't move for a moment. If Gunnar hadn't shouted, I'd be dead. But you didn't run the wrong way. You point out, you didn't panic, you survived. Eric considers this. I suppose that's what matters in the end. Not how brave you looked, but whether you lived to see morning. This pragmatic philosophy underlies much of Viking culture. Survival isn't about performing heroism. It's about making it through to the next challenge. Glory comes second to practicality. As you tend the fire together, Eric shares what he saw of the wolf pack up close. Their ribs were showing through their fur. He describes eyes sunken, their starving, truly desperate. That makes them more dangerous than any well-fed wolf. This observation adds crucial context to the siege situation. The wolves aren't attacking out of territorial aggression or predatory opportunity, but from existential necessity. They're fighting for survival, just like the humans. Spring seems very far away, Eric muses, adding a small log to the fire carefully. It always does in February, you reply with wisdom beyond your years, but it always comes eventually. This cycle of despair and hope characterizes the Viking winter experience. The psychological journey mirrors the seasonal one. Darkness giving way to light, cold yielding to warmth, scarcity replaced by abundance. The certainty of this cycle provides the emotional foundation for enduring its hardest phases. A sound outside breaks the quiet contemplation, a distinct howl but with an unusual tone. Eric tenses. "That's not right," he whispers. "Something's happening with the pack." More howls follow, creating a chaotic chorus. Unlike the coordinated communications you've heard previously, something has disrupted the wolfpack's order. "Should we wake the others?" you ask. Eric listens intently before shaking his head. "Not yet. Let's understand what's happening first." The howling continues now, interspersed with other sounds. Snarls, yelps, the sounds of conflict. The wolfpack appears to be fighting amongst itself, a breakdown of social order triggered by extreme conditions. Food competition, Eric guesses. When resources become too scarce, pack hierarchy sometimes collapses. This insight reflects the detailed understanding Vikings had developed of predator behavior. Through generations of observation, they recognized patterns and turning points in wildlife behavior. Using this knowledge for survival advantage, the wolf discord continues through your watch, gradually diminishing as dawn approaches. When your father rises with the earliest light, Eric reports what you've heard. "Good." Your father says simply, "Division makes them weaker. Today might bring opportunity." The killing cold has passed its peak, though the temperature remains dangerously low. Through the smoke hole, the morning reveals a world transformed. Every surface covered in frost crystals that sparkle in the rising sun. The beauty belies the deadly conditions. As the longhouse stirs to life, your grandmother checks on Ivar's wound. The night has brought a positive turn. The redness has receded and the heat has diminished. The birch bark medicine appears to be working. The infection retreats. She announces the leg may be saved if we remain vigilant. This small victory boosts communal morale. In winter siege conditions, each positive development takes on magnified importance. The psychological balance between hope and despair can tip on such seemingly minor details. The morning meal is served again at reduced rations, but prepared with care to maximize both nutrition and satisfaction. Food isn't just fuel, it's comfort, connection, and continuity. Even in crisis, meals remain a centering ritual. As you eat, the watch calls down exciting news. Smoke on the horizon, many fires moving this way. Your father confirms the sighting. The village relief party. They'll reach us by midday if they maintain pace. The end of the siege is approaching. Help is coming. The immediate crisis will soon resolve, but winter itself remains. And winter is the longest siege of all. The village relief party appears first as dark shapes against the snow, then resolves into a formation of 20 warriors moving in tight formation. They travel on skis, gliding across the deep snow with practiced efficiency. Each carries weapons and supplies. At the center of their formation, they pull 2 cargo sleds loaded with provisions. 23 fighters, counts your father, surveying through the smoke hole, and Bjorn is with them. A murmur of relief ripples through the longhouse. Your brother made it safely to the village and has returned with the rescue party. The sight of the approaching force lifts a weight that's been pressing on the community for days. "The wolves?" asks your mother, joining your father at the observation point. No sign yet, but they're watching. Your father gestures toward the forest edge. They'll know they're outnumbered now. The approaching rescue creates a flurry of activity inside the longhouse. The door area is cleared. Weapons are readied not for immediate threat, but as precaution. Your grandmother prepares medicinal tea for the new arrivals, who will be cold and tired from their journey. "Someone check the gable smoke holes," orders your father, referring to the secondary ventilation openings at either end of the longhouse. "We'll need more air circulation with so many people inside. This practical consideration, adjusting ventilation for increased occupancy, demonstrates the adaptability of Viking architecture. The longhouse isn't a static structure, but a living system that can be reconfigured based on changing needs. As the relief party approaches the cleared area around the buildings, a warning shout goes up from one of their flanking scouts. From your vantage point through the smoke hole, you see the reason. Wolves have emerged from the forest, a scattered line of grey shapes moving parallel to the human formation. "The pack is challenging them," says Gunnar, watching intently, testing for weakness. What unfolds is a deadly ballet across the snow. The wolf pack, which you can now count as 11 animals, circles and probes looking for vulnerability in the human line. The warriors maintain formation, using their numbers to present a unified front while continuing to advance toward the longhouse. "Smart tactics," approves your father. "They're not breaking pace or formation, just making steady progress while staying defensive." The wolves make several feinting runs toward the human group, veering away before actual contact. These aren't serious attack attempts, but assessment probes. The pack leaders gauging the threat level and response patterns. It's a sophisticated, strategic approach that contradicts the image of wolves as mindless predators. "The alpha is trying to separate someone from the group," notes Gunnar, pointing to a larger wolf that repeatedly angles toward one edge of the formation. Classic pack hunting technique. Your father nods. They won't succeed. Gorm is leading the party. "See the red cloak? He's fought wolves since he was younger than you." Gorm, the village war leader, directs the formation with hand signals and occasional short commands. Under his guidance, the warriors maintain perfect cohesion while still advancing steadily toward the longhouse. Their discipline is impressive. Not a single person breaks ranks despite the threatening wolves. As the relief party nears the longhouse, your father makes a decision. Will create a distraction. Ready the horns. 3 men position themselves at different smoke holes with hollowed animal horns, simple but effective signaling devices. At your father's command, they blow simultaneously, creating a discordant blast that echoes across the snow-covered landscape. The effect on the wolves is immediate. Several startle visibly, breaking their formation. The unexpected sound creates momentary confusion in the pack, disrupting their coordinated movements. "Now they sound the advance," predicts your father. Sure enough, horn calls respond from the approaching party. Different patterns signaling attack posture. The warriors accelerate suddenly, shouting battle cries and brandishing weapons. This coordinated aggression, combined with their superior numbers, triggers the wolves' risk assessment. After a moment's hesitation, the pack retreats toward the forest edge, not in panic, but in tactical withdrawal. They recognize the unfavorable odds. Winter has made them desperate, but not suicidal. "They'll be back," Gunnar says grimly. "Just not today, not against these numbers." The relief party reaches the longhouse without further incident. The outer door opens to admit them in small groups, too many to enter all at once. Each arrival brings gusts of frigid air, quickly suppressed as the door closes behind them. Bjorn is among the first inside, immediately surrounded by family offering thanks for his safe return. The journey to the village and back was itself a test of survival skills, especially with wolves hunting the area. His success marks a transition from youth to proven adult in the community's eyes. 3 wolves followed us half the way to the village, he recounts, accepting a cup of warm broth from your mother. But we stayed on open ground and kept our speed up. They gave up when we neared the outlying farms. Your father clasps his shoulder with pride. You chose the right route and kept your head. Well done. The simple praise carries enormous weight. In Viking culture, acknowledgement of competence from established adults represented a crucial step in status advancement. Bjorn stands taller, his face flushed with more than just the cold. Gorm, the war leader, enters next, a bear of a man with a frost-crusted beard and calculating eyes that miss nothing as they scan the longhouse interior. He exchanges formal greetings with your father before getting straight to practical matters. We brought supplies, he states, flour, dried meat, extra blankets, enough to supplement your stores for 3 weeks. The village council agreed it's better to share now than rescue starving people later. This community-level resource sharing was a cornerstone of Norse winter survival. Individual farmsteads might maintain independence in good times, but winter created mutual dependency that everyone recognized. The strong supported the vulnerable, knowing roles might reverse with the next crisis. The situation, Gorm asks, settling near the fire. Your father provides a concise briefing, the wolfpack's behavior, the wounded men's condition, the longhouse defenses, and current supply levels. The exchange isn't just formational, but strategic. 2 leaders coordinating a response to shared threats. Similar attacks at 3 other farmsteads. Gorm reports, this winter has driven the wolves to new desperation. We've organized hunting parties to thin their numbers, while protecting the outlying farms. This region-wide coordination demonstrates the sophisticated social organization that allowed Norse communities to survive extreme conditions. Isolated families alone couldn't withstand winter's worst challenges. The collective response provided security that individuals couldn't achieve. As the rest of the relief party enters, the longhouse grows crowded but energized. New faces bring fresh stories, different perspectives, and welcome distractions from the siege monotony. The atmosphere shifts from crisis management to something approaching normally. The visitors distribute their brought supplies, not just necessities, but small luxuries too. Someone has carried precious salt, another brings dried apples. One warrior produces a small pouch of walnut pieces, sharing them among the children. These thoughtful additions recognize that winter survival requires emotional sustenance alongside physical necessities. Gorm consults with your grandmother about the wounded. Though primarily a warrior, he respects her healing knowledge without reservation. This integration of different expertise spheres, military, medical, domestic, characterized Viking problem-solving. Specialized knowledge was valued regardless of its source. The wolf bites concern me most, your grandmother explains, showing him Ivar's healing leg wound. We're watching for fever signs. The birch bark pus helps, but we need more. We brought fresh medicines, Gorm responds, including raven's fat for wound binding. This specific remedy, fat from ravens prepared with certain herbs, was particularly valued for treating animal bites. Modern analysis has shown it contained natural antimicrobial compounds. The Vikings didn't understand the biochemistry, but generations of observation had identified effective treatments. As medical discussions continue, your father and Gorm turn to planning the immediate future. The relief party will remain for 3 days, long enough to secure the area, hunt game if possible, and strengthen the farmstead's defenses before returning to the village with any vulnerable community members. We should check the outlying buildings while we have the numbers, suggests your father. The smokehouse, storage sheds, and cattle barn need repairs after the storm. Gorm agrees, organizing teams for different tasks. The strategic approach is comprehensive, addressing immediate safety, medium-term food security, and infrastructure integrity in systematic fashion. This wasn't reactive survival, but proactive planning. You find yourself assigned to a team inspecting and repairing the smokehouse, a critical food preservation facility that has suffered damage during the recent storm under the supervision of an older warrior named Halfdan. You help clear snow from the roof and reinforce a sagging beam. Good work. Halfdan comments as you efficiently pass tools and materials. You've done this before. Every winter, you confirm. Father says the smokehouse is more important than our own sleeping quarters. Halfdan nods approvingly. Smart man. A strong family can sleep in a damaged house, but no one survives spring without properly smoked meat. This practical wisdom, prioritizing food security infrastructure over comfort, reflects the pragmatic value system that enabled Viking survival. The hierarchy of needs was clearly understood, with little sentimentality clouding crucial decisions. As repairs progress, you notice Halfdan examining your technique with thoughtful attention. Viking education rarely involved formal instruction. Instead, adults observed young people's work to identify aptitudes and interests that might develop into specialized roles. "You have good hands for detail work," he comments casually. "Ever considered learning the carpenter's craft? The village needs a new apprentice." Old Thorstein's eyes are failing him. The suggestion lands with surprising weight. This isn't idle conversation, but a potential life direction being identified. In Viking society, specialized crafts provided both community status and economic security. A recognized carpenter would never lack for work or respect. "I hadn't thought about it," you admit, suddenly seeing a possible future path unfolding. "Think about it during the remaining winter," Halfdan suggests. "Speak to your father if you're interested. I can arrange an introduction to Thorstein in spring." This casual interaction demonstrates how Viking winter wasn't merely about physical survival, but also social continuity, identifying the next generation's skills, establishing mentorship pathways, and ensuring knowledge transmission. Even in crisis, the long-term viability of the community remained in focus. By midday, the combined workforce has made significant progress on repairs and security improvements. The longhouse feels different, not just more crowded, but more confident. The wolf threat hasn't disappeared, but its psychological grip has loosened. A communal meal brings everyone together, with the newcomers contributing from their supplies to create the most substantial feast since the elk hunt. The atmosphere approaches celebration, though tempered by the awareness that winter dangers continue. During the meal, village news is exchanged. Births, deaths, conflicts, reconciliations. This isn't mere gossip, but vital social intelligence maintaining community cohesion across physically separated farmsteads. Who has married? Who has quarreled? Whose farm prospers or struggles? All this information shapes future interactions and mutual support networks. Old Sigrid, passed during last week's storm, reports one of the village women went peacefully in her sleep, which is all any of us can hope for in winter. Everyone nods respectfully. Winter deaths, particularly of the elderly, were expected but still honored. Sigrid would be placed in a temporary storage building until spring allowed for proper burial rites. This pragmatic handling of death reflected Viking acceptance of natural cycles. "And Frida gave birth to twin boys the night before we left," adds another woman on a brighter note. Both healthy and loud, lunged. This news brings genuine cheer. Successful winter births represented hope and continuity. The mother and infants would receive special community support, with extra food shares allocated until spring. Another example of collective resource management, prioritizing vulnerable members. As the meal concludes, Gorm outlines the plan for dealing with the wolf pack permanently. "We've tracked them to a denning area 2 valleys over," he explains. "Tomorrow we hunt them systematically, not for sport or glory, but necessity. This isn't presented as revenge or sport, but as ecological management, a calculated reduction of predator pressure to sustainable levels." Vikings understood their environment as a system requiring balance. Too many wolves threatened human survival, but eliminating them entirely would create different problems. "We leave 5 warriors here as security," Gorm continues. "The rest join the hunt. We should return by nightfall." Your father agrees with the approach. The combined force will easily outnumber the weakened wolf pack, bringing the immediate crisis to resolution while addressing the regional threat. As afternoon fades toward evening, the crowded longhouse reorganizes for the night. Sleeping arrangements are negotiated with the visitors, accommodated throughout the available space. Privacy becomes an even more theoretical concept than usual, but no one complains. The social connection outweighs the inconvenience. The evening transitions into storytelling, with visitors and hosts trading tales. These range from practical hunting advice disguised as adventure stories to mythological narratives reinforcing cultural values. The educational content is substantial, but delivered as entertainment rather than instruction. One of the village warriors, known for his narrative skill, shares a story about Thor's battle with frost giants, a myth that metaphorically addresses winter survival through heroic imagery. The children listen aptly, absorbing both the cultural framework and the embedded practical wisdom about respecting winter's power. And then Thor raised Mjolnir high, the storyteller in tones dramatically mimicking the hammer-lifting gesture. But the frost giant laughed. "Your strength means nothing against winter's bite," the giant mocked. "I am cold itself, and I freeze all who challenge me." The children's eyes widen at this apparent setback for their hero. Even the adults lean forward, though they've heard the tale many times before. Thor lowered his hammer, then continues the storyteller, his voice dropping, and the giants thought he surrendered. But Thor was wise as well as strong. He said, "I do not fight you alone, giant. I fight with knowledge passed from my father and his father before him." The storyteller pauses for effect, looking around the rapt audience. Thor then built not a weapon but a fire, not a shield, but a shelter, not alone, but with companions. And when the frost giant attacked again, Thor's preparation defeated what strength alone could not. This conclusion draws murmurs of approval. The lesson is clear. Winter survival depends not on individual heroism, but on preparation, knowledge, and community. Even the gods succeed through wisdom rather than mere power when facing winter's challenges. As more stories unfold, you notice your grandmother deep in conversation with a visitor you haven't met before. An older woman wearing distinctive jewelry that marks her as a Velver, a Cirrus and keeper of magical knowledge. Their hushed exchange appears serious with occasional glances toward the wounded men. Your curiosity draws you closer, catching fragments of their conversation. The infection spreads despite the birch bark. Your grandmother is saying, "I've tried the usual remedies." The vulva nods thoughtfully. There are older methods from before the Christ followers came. This reference to pre-Christian practices isn't unusual in your community. Though officially converted generations ago, many Norse settlements maintained dual religious traditions, especially in medicine and protection rituals. Christianity claimed public allegiance, but older ways persisted in private practical applications. "I remember some," your grandmother acknowledges, "but your knowledge runs deeper." Tonight then, the Velvides, when most sleep, these methods work better in darkness. You realize you're witnessing the arrangement of a healing ritual that blends ancient practices with newer medical techniques. The pragmatic Viking approach of using whatever works, regardless of its origin. This medical pluralism likely saved many lives that dogmatic adherence to a single tradition might have lost. As night deepens, most of the longhouse occupants settle into sleep. The extra bodies actually improve the thermal environment, raising the ambient temperature noticeably. You drift off to sleep more comfortably than you have in days, lulled by the sense of security that numbers provide. You wake briefly in deepest night, roused by soft chanting from the area where the wounded men rest. Through half-opened eyes you glimpse your grandmother and the ulver working by firelight, their hands moving in practiced patterns over Ivar's injured leg. They apply substances you can't identify, whispering words in an older dialect that you only partially understand. This glimpse of ancient healing practices surviving alongside newer methods demonstrates the practical syncretism that characterized Viking culture. They weren't rigid traditionalists or eager adopters of the new, but pragmatic users of whatever proved effective, regardless of its source or age. Morning brings renewed activity and purpose. The hunting party prepares to depart, checking weapons and discussing strategy. This isn't casual preparation, but methodical planning with contingencies considered and roles assigned. Wolf hunting. In winter, conditions present specific challenges that require coordination and discipline. We hunt in pairs, Gorm instructs. No one separates from their partner regardless of circumstance. We drive them toward the eastern ridge, where the archers will be positioned. This tactical approach, using coordinated human movements to manipulate predator behavior, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of wolf psychology and group dynamics. Vikings weren't just strong warriors, but shrewd strategists who maximized advantages through planning. Your father and Bjorn are both joining the hunt. As they prepare, your mother ensures their equipment is optimal. checking binding security. On skis, testing blade sharpness, packing emergency fire starters. These small attentions might seem minor, but could determine survival if conditions deteriorate. Remember your training, she tells Bjorn, adjusting his outer cloak. No heroics. Bjorn nods seriously. His recent messenger journey has matured him visibly. He understands now that survival isn't about individual glory, but returning safely to contribute again tomorrow. As the hunting party departs, those remaining reorganize the longhouse again. With fewer bodies, ventilation is adjusted and sleeping areas reconfigured. The constant adaptation continues. Viking living spaces weren't static environments, but responsive systems continuously optimized for changing conditions. Your grandmother checks the wounded men, paying particular attention to Ivar's leg. Whatever ritual she performed with the vulva during the night appears to have helped. The angry redness has receded further, and his fever has broken. The old ways have power. She comments quietly to you as you help change bandages. Remember that knowledge is never wasted, even when new ways come. This perspective, valuing traditional knowledge while remaining open to innovation, characterizes the Viking approach to survival challenges. They weren't conservative or progressive in modern terms, but pragmatic adapters who evaluated ideas based on results rather than origin. With the immediate wolf threat reduced by the hunting party's presence, attention turns to medium-term survival tasks. You join a small group venturing to the frozen stream to cut ice blocks, a winter water source when liquid water is inaccessible. The relief party provides security, making this essential work possible again. Ice harvesting requires specialized tools and techniques. You use iron-tipped picks to break through the surface, then saws to cut uniform blocks that can be transported on sleds. The work is physically demanding but methodical, with each person performing specific roles in the process. We'll need at least 20 blocks, calculates the team leader. Enough for 3 days melting. This precise resource planning extends to all aspects of Viking winter life. Nothing is gathered randomly or in excess. Each activity has specific targets based on consumption rates and storage capacity. The mathematical thinking is impressive, especially considering it occurs without written calculations. As you work, on the frozen stream, one of the village warriors tells you about a new technique they've developed for ice storage by covering blocks with sawdust and storing them in north-facing, partially underground chambers. They've managed to preserve ice well into summer, extending the food preservation season significantly. We kept fish until midsummer last year, he explains proudly. The village headman traded some to a merchant ship, got twice the usual price because no one else had fresh fish. Then this innovation, essentially a primitive refrigeration system, demonstrates the continuous adaptation that characterized Viking technology. They weren't simply repeating ancestral methods, but actively improving them through experimentation and observation. When you return with the ice blocks, the longhouse has been transformed yet again. The relief party brought not just supplies, but news and social connection, revitalizing the winter-weary farmstead. Children play games learned from village peers. Women exchange pattern designs for spring weaving projects. Men discuss construction improvements for the coming building season. This social revitalization is as important as the material assistance. Winter isolation took psychological tolls that regular community interaction helped alleviate. The relief visit serves emotional needs alongside practical ones, another dimension of holistic survival strategy. By late afternoon, everyone's attention turns toward the forest edge, watching for the returning hunting party. Their success or failure will determine whether the wolf threat has truly ended or merely paused. The waiting creates palpable tension. Finally, movement appears at the treine. The hunting party emerges onto open ground, moving steadily toward the longhouse. Even from a distance, their posture communicates success. They move with the relaxed confidence of those who have eliminated a threat. As they draw closer, details become visible. Several men drag sleds loaded with wolf carcasses, trophies that represent both security and valuable resources. Wolf fur makes excellent winter clothing. Tendons provide strong cord material. Even the meat, though not preferred, is usable in emergency conditions. Your father and Bjorn return safely, tired but uninjured. The hunt was successful beyond expectations. 9 wolves killed with the remaining pack members scattered and unlikely to regroup. They were already fighting amongst themselves when we found them. Your father reports starving weakened. Some showed signs of illness. It was almost too easy. This outcome reflects ecological reality. The wolf pack had already exceeded the carrying capacity of their territory, leading to internal conflict and disease. The human intervention merely accelerated a natural population correction that winter would have eventually forced. Gorm supervises the processing of the wolf carcasses, not inside the longhouse, but in a designated outdoor area where the valuable materials can be harvested without contaminating living spaces. Nothing is wasted from fur to bones. Even parts not immediately useful are preserved for potential future applications. The threat is managed, Gorm announces formally that evening. We'll return to the village tomorrow with anyone who wishes to relocate until spring, though staying should be secure now with proper precautions. This option, temporary relocation to the more populous village during winter's height, was a standard safety measure. Not everyone would choose it. Farmsteads needed minimum maintenance even in winter, but the vulnerable, elderly, very young, injured often accepted the village's greater security. After discussion, decisions are made. Eva and one elderly couple will return to the village for better care. Everyone else, including your family, will remain at the farmstead. The improved security situation and replenished supplies make this a reasonable choice. The evening becomes celebratory, not raucous feasting, but quiet satisfaction in crisis overcome. The wolf pelts are displayed with hunting stories shared. A small portion of precious mead is distributed, enough for ceremonial toast but not wasteful indulgence. As the evening progresses, you notice the vulva observing you with curious intensity. Eventually she approaches, sitting beside you near the fire. You saw the healing ritual, she states without preamble. Most your age would pretend sleep, but you watched with open eyes. You nod, uncertain whether admission brings trouble. Curiosity serves survival, she continues approvingly. The closed mind dies first in winter. This validation of intellectual curiosity reflects an often overlooked aspect of Viking culture, their respect for knowledge acquisition and mental adaptability. The stereotype of mindless berserkers contradicts the historical reality of a people who valued learning and innovation alongside physical capability. Your grandmother says you have the sight in your blood. The Velva adds, you sometimes know things before they happen. This reference to intuitive abilities, what modern people might call heightened pattern recognition or unconscious processing, was taken seriously in Norse culture. Such sight wasn't dismissed as superstition, but recognized as a valuable survival trait that helped anticipate threats and opportunities. Sometimes you acknowledge cautiously dreams that come true later, feelings about people that prove right. The Velv nods as if confirming a theory. If you were a girl, I'd offer apprenticeship. But even for boys, such gifts have value. Watch for signs. Trust what you sense. Winter speaks to those who listen. This brief exchange opens a window into the complex Norse understanding of perception and prediction. They recognized that survival often depended on noticing subtle environmental signals, anticipating dangers before they manifested fully. This wasn't mysticism to them, but practical advantage, another tool for navigating winter's challenges. As night settles fully over the longhouse, the atmosphere is transformed from the tense vigilance of recent days. The wolf threat has been neutralized. Supplies have been replenished. Community bonds have been reinforced. Winter hasn't ended, but its grip has loosened momentarily. In your sleeping furs, warm and relatively secure, you reflect on what you've witnessed. Crisis, response, adaptation, and resolution. The wolves were just one of winter's many challenges. Others will follow before spring arrives, but the knowledge embedded in your community, passed through generations and continuously refined, provides a pathway through the cold months. Winter survival isn't about conquering nature, but understanding it, working with its patterns while respecting its power. The Vikings mastered this balance not through dominance, but through observation, adaptation, and cooperation. As sleep approaches, you wonder what challenges tomorrow will bring, knowing that whatever comes, the accumulated wisdom of your ancestors has prepared you to face it. Winter continues, but so do you. Morning brings the departure preparations. The relief party readies to return to the village, taking with them Ivar and the elderly couple, who've chosen relocation. The mood is bittersweet. Gratitude for the assistance mingles with awareness that the farmstead will again face winter's challenges with reduced numbers. Goodbyes are practical rather than emotional. Vikings rarely indulged in lengthy farewells. The harsh reality of their world meant any parting might be permanent, making elaborate goodbyes both painful and inefficient. Keep the south wall reinforced. Gorm advises your father before leaving. That's where the next storm will hit hardest. Your father nods, accepting the weather prediction with respect. Gorm's joint experience as warrior and fisherman has honed his ability to read natural patterns, a skill as valuable as strength in the Viking world. As the visitors make final preparations, resources are redistributed. The village has sent gifts beyond emergency supplies, small luxuries that acknowledge the farmstead's continued value to the community. A pouch of precious salt, iron fish hooks crafted by the village smith, a small jar of honey reserved normally for the ill. For the children, says Gorm, presenting your mother with the honey jar. To remember sweetness exists even in winter's heart. This poetic turn isn't at odds with his warrior status. Vikings didn't compartmentalize their identities as modern people often do. A man could be both fearsome fighter and thoughtful philosopher, skilled craftsman and sensitive poet. These weren't contradictions, but dimensions of a complete person. The departing party takes with them the wolf pelts, not a seizure of resources, but for efficient processing. The village tanner has specialized tools and techniques that will maximize the value of these materials. Once prepared, the pelts will be fairly distributed, with the farmstead receiving its proper share when travel becomes easier. We'll send someone in a fortnight if weather allows, Gorm promises earlier if another storm threatens. This commitment to ongoing support reflects the communal survival strategy that defined Norse winter life. No farmstead was truly isolated. All existed within a mutual assistance network that recognized individual vulnerability while promoting collective resilience. The departure itself is swift and orderly. The visitors leave at dawn when the snow bears wait best before the day's slight warming. They travel light but prepared, moving in defensive formation despite the reduced wolf threat. Vigilance never fully relaxes in winter. You watch from the smoke hole as they diminish into the distance, becoming dark shapes against the white landscape, then disappearing into the forest edge. The farmstead feels suddenly empty, though your family and the remaining neighboring families still number 15 people. After the crowded days with the relief party, the longhouse seems cavernous. Back to our routine, announces your father, practical as always. We've lost 3 days of regular work. Time to recover the pattern. This emphasis on routine wasn't mere habit, but survival strategy. Winter required disciplined time management to accomplish essential tasks within daylight's limited hours. Interruptions to established rhythms could cascade into serious resource shortfalls if not quickly corrected. The day's tasks are distributed with practiced efficiency. Men check structural integrity after the storm and wolf crisis. Women inventory food stores with mathematical precision. Children are assigned appropriate supporting roles based on age and ability. Nothing is random. Everyone contributes to the survival machine. Your assignment today focuses on an aspect of Viking winter life rarely depicted in modern imagery: textile production. You join your mother and 2 other women at the large standing loom erected against the longhouse wall. Here, crucial winter work continues, regardless of external crisis. We need to complete this length before month's end. Your mother explains, showing you the partially finished woolen fabric. Without enough new cloth, spring garments can't be made. This practical concern, ensuring sufficient textile production during winter for the coming year's clothing needs, represented one of the most essential winter activities. Without adequate cloth, everything from daily wear to sailing gear would be compromised, affecting all aspects of Viking life, from farming to trading to warfare. The loom itself is an impressive piece of engineering. A warp-weighted design, where stone or clay weights tension vertical threads, allowing horizontal threads weft to be passed through methodically. The technique predates the Vikings by thousands of years, but was refined to high efficiency in Norse culture. Your tension is improving, notes your mother as you work the threads carefully, more consistent than last month. This simple praise carries significant weight. Textile production wasn't merely women's work, but highly valued technical skill that directly impacted survival. A well-made cloth provided better insulation, lasted longer and required less material. All crucial efficiency factors in a resource-limited environment. As you work, your mother and the other women engage in a unique form of winter education, rhythmic knowledge transmission through work songs. These weren't mere entertainment, but sophisticated memory devices that preserved and conveyed critical information. Warp above, weft below. This is how the strong cloths grow. They sing in unison. Summer sheep give winter warmth. Spring will come when cloth goes forth. The simple lyrics contain multiple layers of practical knowledge, proper weaving technique, seasonal resource planning, and psychological reinforcement of winter's temporary nature. The rhythmic nature helps maintain consistent work pace while embedding information in memorable patterns. For the next hour, you absorb both technical skill and cultural knowledge simultaneously. The women sing of wool types and their best uses, of dye plants to gather in different seasons, of weaving patterns that shed water or trap maximum air for insulation. Nothing is written, yet nothing important is forgotten. The songs ensure knowledge survives across generations. Across the longhouse, other winter activities continue with similar efficiency. Two men work on tool repair, a critical winter task when outdoor work is limited. They carefully wreck axes, resharpen blades, and re-ring bows. Each implement receives methodical attention. Its condition assessed and restored for spring's demanding workload. Check the bow flexibility carefully, advises the older man to his younger companion. Too stiff and it shatters in cold. Too flexible and the arrow flies weak. This nuanced understanding of how materials behave across temperature ranges represented sophisticated engineering knowledge. Vikings weren't simply strong users of tools, but thoughtful designers who understood material properties and environmental interactions. Near the central fire, your grandmother supervises several children sorting through carefully preserved herb bundles hanging from the rafters. This isn't busy work, but pharmaceutical management, identifying, organizing, and preparing the healing substances that might mean life or death before spring. This one for fever, she instructs, having a child smell a particular dried plant. Remember the scent. Someday you might need it when no healer is near. The educational approach integrates multiple senses, smell, touch, visual recognition, ensuring that critical knowledge embeds deeply in young minds. This multi-sensory teaching created resilient memory patterns that remained accessible even under stress or in emergency conditions. By midday, the reorganized routine has fully re-established itself. The wolf crisis and relief visit already feel distant, absorbed into the steady rhythm of winter survival. This adaptability, the ability to navigate disruption and return to functional patterns, defined successful Viking communities. The midday meal demonstrates another aspect of Viking winter food management, the strategic deployment of variety to maintain morale. Rather than simply consuming the same preserved foods daily, meals were carefully planned to provide psychological refreshment alongside nutrition. We'll use the smoked fish today, announces your mother, breaking the usual pattern of meat and grain. A change will lift spirits. This wasn't extravagance, but calculated psychological management. Winter's length created monotony that could depress motivation and energy. Periodic variations in food, activities, and social arrangements helped combat the emotional fatigue that threatened survival as surely as cold or hunger. As everyone gathers for the meal, your father shares news that will affect the coming days. The ice thickness on the lake has reached walking safety. Tomorrow we begin serious fishing. This announcement generates visible excitement, especially among the men. Ice fishing represented not just additional food sources, but a welcome change in routine after long confinement. The psychological benefit of productive outdoor activity couldn't be overstated during winter's darkest period. The village reports good catches on their lake, he continues. The fish are schooling densely this year. Such information sharing between settlements created a regional knowledge network that helped optimize resource harvesting. If one community discovered effective techniques or favorable locations, this intelligence spread quickly, benefiting everyone's survival chances. As the meal concludes, another winter ritual begins. The mid-winter inventory, this formal accounting of all resources, wasn't merely practical but ceremonial, marking the winter midpoint and the first acknowledgement that spring, though distant, was now approaching rather than receding. We count everything, your father explains to the younger children, Food, fuel, fodder, fiber. What remains must last until green growth returns. The process is methodical and community-wide. Every storage container is opened, its contents assessed and recorded using a tally stick system. Food stores are weighed or measured. Firewood is precisely stacked and counted. Animal fodder is calculated against livestock needs. Nothing is estimated. Everything is quantified. You help with the cloth inventory, carefully measuring completed lengths and assessing remaining raw wool. The mathematical precision is impressive. People who never learned written arithmetic, performing complex calculations of resource consumption rates projected across multiple future scenarios. At current use, the grain stores will last until the first spring fishing calculates your mother using notched sticks as calculation aids. If we reduce bread portions by a finger's width, we extend to planting time. This kind of precise resource projection executed without written mathematics demonstrated the sophisticated cognitive tools Vikings applied to survival challenges. The calculations weren't approximate but exact, with consumption rates adjusted in tiny increments to achieve optimal outcomes. As the inventory progresses, a startling discovery creates concern. The root vegetable storage, critical for preventing scurvy and providing carbohydrates, shows signs of unexpected spoilage. A bin of turnips has developed black rot that threatens to spread to adjacent stores. Frost got in somehow determines your father, examining the damaged vegetables. We need to sort and salvage immediately. This launches an unplanned but urgent project. Everyone drops other tasks to help separate damaged roots from healthy ones. The compromised vegetables aren't discarded. Viking waste avoidance wouldn't permit that, but are processed immediately for shorter-term use. The rot-damaged portions are cut away, and the remaining good parts are prepared for cooking within days, rather than weeks. We'll make a turnip stew tonight, decides your mother, adapting meal plans to accommodate the unexpected bounty of vegetables that must be used quickly, and pickle what we can't eat immediately. This rapid adaptation to resource threats exemplified the resilience that characterized successful winter survival. Problems weren't met with despair, but with immediate practical solutions that minimized loss and maximized remaining value. As afternoon progresses, weather changes become apparent. The relative clarity of recent days yields to increasing cloud cover. The quality of light shifts, taking on the diffuse gray characteristic of approaching snow. The wind direction changes now, coming from the northeast, traditionally associated with severe weather. Storm coming, predicts your grandmother, her arthritic joints providing a reliable forecasting system. 2 days, maybe less. No one questions this assessment. Age-related weather sensitivity was recognized as valid observational data, not dismissed as superstition. Viking survival depended on integrating all available information sources, regardless of their nature. A prediction based on joint pain received the same serious consideration as one based on cloud patterns. Preparations begin immediately, illustrating another Viking winter principle: the advanced response to anticipated threats. Rather than waiting for the storm to arrive, activities shift to pre-storm readiness while conditions still permit efficient work. We need 3 days' worth of firewood inside before it hits, calculates your father. And extra water. The wood requirement translates to specific action. Men with axes and saws head to the already felled timber storage area to process logs into usable size. Women organize indoor storage spaces to accommodate the additional material without creating hazards. Children are tasked with snow collection for water reserves, gathering clean snow into large wooden tubs that can be melted as needed. You join the snow collection team using wooden shovels to fill containers with the cleanest available snow, usually that found on elevated surfaces rather than ground level. This task, seemingly simple, incorporates sophisticated understanding of water purity. Vikings recognized that snow accumulated different contaminants depending on its location and age. Take from the roof snow, not the ground snow, instructs an older girl supervising the work, and the white layers, not the gray ones. This differential selection demonstrated empirical knowledge of snow stratification, how wind-blown pollutants created distinct layers with varying purity. The Vikings might not have understood the microbiology, but generations of observation had identified which snow sources led to illness and which to health. As you work, an unexpected visitor appears at the longhouse entrance. A lone traveler on skis approaching from the direction opposite the village. The appearance of a solitary winter traveler immediately raises both interest and caution. Winter journeys alone were undertaken only out of necessity or for specialized purposes. The visitor's clothing identifies him before he even reaches speaking distance. The distinctive dark robes and staff marking him as a Christian priest, likely from the small church established near the regional trading center some days' journey away. His presence is unusual but not unprecedented. "Peace to this house," he greets in accented Norse as he's admitted through the entrance airlock. "I seek shelter before the storm." Your father welcomes him with formal courtesy, despite the region's relatively recent conversion to Christianity. Relationships between old beliefs and new remained pragmatically cordial in most areas. Religious exclusivity was a luxury few could afford when survival required community cooperation, regardless of faith differences. "You travel dangerously, Father Eric," comments your father. Recognizing the priest from previous trading season encounters alone in winter with wolves still hungry. The priest smiles tiredly as he accepts a cup of warm broth. "God protects his servants, and I carry this for wolves who doubt divine protection." He pats a serviceable axe secured to his belt. This practical approach to faith, trust in God supplemented by a sharp blade, epitomize the syncretic nature of early Norse Christianity. New beliefs blended with old practicality, creating a distinctive religious expression that accommodated both spiritual devotion and survival necessity. The priest's arrival adds an unexpected dimension to the evening. After warming himself and consuming a modest meal, he shares news from distant settlements, information that would otherwise take weeks or months to reach your relatively isolated farmstead. The king's tax collectors will come earlier than usual when roads clear, he mentions, delivering practical political information that affects economic planning. The Southern War requires more silver. Such intelligence about governance activities, especially taxation, was valuable for household management. Knowing to reserve additional resources for spring tax collection could prevent damaging shortfalls later. The priest's circuit thus served both religious and practical communication functions. Later, he conducts a brief religious service for those interested. About half the longhouse attends, while others continue evening tasks without apparent conflict. This religious flexibility, where Christian and traditional Norse practices coexisted without daily tension, characterized much of the transitional. Period pragmatism typically outweighed doctrinal purity in survival contexts. After the service, the evening transitions to a different type of knowledge sharing, technical education. Winter evenings provided crucial opportunities for skill transmission when outdoor work was impossible. Tonight, one of the older men demonstrates specialized wood joining techniques used in ship construction. The secret is in the angle, he explains, showing how seemingly simple cuts create surprisingly strong connections without metal fasteners. Too steep and it splits under pressure. Too shallow and it pulls apart in high seas. This sophisticated carpentry knowledge, developed through generations of shipbuilding experience, wasn't written in manuals, but preserved through direct demonstration and supervised practice. Young people observe intently, asking questions and attempting the techniques under guidance. The technical complexity rivals modern engineering education, despite occurring around a fire in a smoke-filled longhouse. You watch with particular interest, remembering Halfdan's suggestion about carpentry apprenticeship, the precise movements, the careful assessment of wood grain, the mathematical visualization required to achieve proper angles. All these elements appeal to your detail-oriented mind. Want to try? Offers the shipwright. Noticing your attention, you accept the offered tools, attempting to replicate the demonstrated joint under his guidance. Your first attempt is imperfect, but shows promise, earning a thoughtful nod from the craftsman. "Good hands," he comments, echoing Halfdan's earlier assessment. "You see the grain patterns naturally." This casual interaction represents another aspect of Viking winter education, talent identification and cultivation. The community continuously assessed young people's aptitudes, guiding them towards specializations that matched their natural abilities. This wasn't formal career counseling, but organic skill matching that benefited both individual and community. As evening deepens, the approaching storm makes itself known. Wind increases audibly, creating distinctive moans and whistles as it finds tiny gaps in the longhouse construction. Snow begins falling again, visible through the smoke hole as swirling white against deepening darkness. It comes faster than expected, notes your grandmother, listening to the changing wind sounds. We should prepare for 3 days, not 2. This adjustment, based on sensory information rather than formal measurement, demonstrates the continuous assessment and response that characterized Viking weather adaptation. Predictions were never fixed, but constantly updated based on new data with plans modified accordingly. Additional preparations begin immediately. The evening bread dough already rising near the fire is divided into smaller loaves that will bake more quickly. Water containers are checked and filled completely. Extra rushlights are prepared and stored accessibly in case the central fire needs supplementation during the storm's peak. We should bring more animals inside, suggests your mother. Considering the deteriorating conditions, the separate barn may not hold against this wind. Your father weighs this recommendation, balancing the discomfort of additional livestock in the living space against the risk of losing animals to cold or structural damage. After brief consideration, he agrees. The youngest calves and pregnant ewes. He decides the strongest can remain in the barn with extra bedding. This selective approach, protecting the most vulnerable livestock while maintaining separate housing for hardier animals, reflected nuanced resource management. Each decision balanced multiple factors: animal survival, human comfort, food security, and structural limitations. As men venture out to retrieve the selected animals, you help prepare additional indoor livestock areas. The young calves will be housed in a corner, reinforced with extra straw bedding. The pregnant ewe will occupy expanded pen space in the lofts. None of these arrangements is ideal, but all are viable compromises that prioritize survival over comfort. The transferred animals arrive, bringing additional warmth but also noise and odor to the already crowded longhouse. No one complains. These are anticipated winter conditions. The pregnant ewes seem particularly disturbed by the relocation, bleating nervously as they're settled into their temporary housing. They sense the storm pressure, explains your grandmother. Animals know weather changes in their bodies before we see signs. This recognition of animal sensitivity as a legitimate information source exemplified the Vikings' integrated knowledge system. Observations from all available sources, human senses, animal behavior, physical indicators combined to create a comprehensive environmental awareness that supported survival decisions. With storm preparations complete, the evening transitions to the most important winter activity of all: deep rest. Conservation of energy through adequate sleep represented a crucial survival strategy during winter's metabolic challenges. Unlike modern people who often sacrifice sleep to productivity, Vikings recognized rest as essential biological maintenance. Early to furs tonight, announces your father. The storm will demand strength tomorrow. No one objects to this sensible instruction. Sleep isn't considered laziness, but necessary recovery, particularly before anticipated challenges. The longhouse settles quickly, with families arranging themselves in sleeping groups designed to maximize shared warmth. You join your siblings under layers of wool blankets and fur coverings, positioned on the sleeping platform at precisely the optimal distance from the central fire. Close enough for warmth, but not so near as to risk sparks or excessive drying of breathing passages. The visitor priest is provided sleeping space near the fire, a position of honor that acknowledges both his status and his likely lack of cold adaptation. After living in the more substantial church buildings, he accepts graciously, adding his own blanket to those provided by the household. As the longhouse quiets, only essential sounds remain: the fire's crackling, the wind's increasing moans, occasional animal movements, and the deep breathing of sleeping humans. The space has transformed from active survival machine to regenerative shelter, its occupants conserving energy for tomorrow's demands. Your last thoughts before sleep overtakes you focus on the storm's approach and the priest's unexpected arrival. Both represent the unpredictability that defines winter life, the constant interplay between planning and adaptation, between expected challenges and unexpected developments. The Vikings survived not through rigid adherence to fixed patterns, but through responsive flexibility within structured frameworks. They planned thoroughly, but adapted instantly. They maintained traditions while embracing innovations. They respected nature's power, while developing techniques to navigate its challenges. As sleep claims you fully, the storm's voice rises further. a wild counterpoint to the protected quiet within the longhouse. These contrasting sounds, nature's fury and human shelter, embody the fundamental relationship that defined Viking winter survival. Not conquest of winter, but coexistence with it. Not defeat of nature, but adaptation within it. Not individual heroism, but communal resilience. The storm rages on and winter continues. The storm arrives with full fury during the night. You wake to a sound like no other. A deep, sustained howl as wind batters the longhouse with relentless force. The structure itself seems to breathe, subtly expanding and contracting under pressure. Tiny streams of snow filter through imperceptible gaps in the roof thatch, creating miniature white drifts on the floor. Is it supposed to sound like that? Whispers your little sister, wide-eyed in the dimness. Like what, you ask? Like it's alive, angry? You understand her meaning. The storm has a voice, sometimes screaming, sometimes moaning, occasionally producing an eerie whistle that does indeed sound like some vast living creature expressing rage. The experience is both frightening and inspiring. It's just wind finding small openings. You explain with more confidence than you feel. The sound changes with the size of the gap. This scientific explanation passed down from your father represents the practical Viking approach to natural phenomena. They recognized patterns, developed explanations, and transmitted this understanding across generations, not to eliminate fear entirely, but to place it within a manageable context. Sleep returns fitfully. The storm's variable intensity creates a rhythm of calmer periods, followed by renewed assaults during one particularly violent gust. A wooden cup falls from a shelf, startling everyone awake momentarily before the familiar pattern of breathing resumes. The shared experience, each person briefly alert then returning to rest, emphasizes the communal nature of winter survival. Dawn arrives without visible sunlight. The smoke hole, partially blocked by drifting snow despite its internal cover, reveals only swirling white and grey. The transition from night to day is marked primarily by subtle light quality changes, rather than direct illumination. Strong one, comments your father as people stir from their sleeping platforms. His typical understatement masks the serious assessment taking place as he studies the longhouse interior for signs of structural stress. The morning routine adapts to storm conditions. The fire receives immediate attention built higher than normal to counter the chill from increased drafts. Breakfast preparation begins with stored rather than fresh snow for water. Venturing outside even briefly would be dangerous in the current conditions. We'll need a snow clearing rotation once it passes. Your father plans already looking ahead to post-storm recovery. The drifts will likely reach the roof on the northeastern side. This forward-thinking approach, addressing future challenges while managing present ones, characterized effective Viking leadership. Each crisis contained the seeds of the next. Preparation was continuous and overlapping rather than sequential. The visiting priest joins the morning activities without special accommodation. He helps move firewood from storage to the active supply near the central hearth, working alongside others without distinction. This practical participation, religious status yielding to immediate survival needs, reflects the pragmatic religious integration typical of the period. In my homeland, such storms lasted weeks, he mentions while arranging logs. My father taught me to carve wood figures during the confinement. It preserved sanity. This personal sharing humanizes the religious figure, placing him within the universal context of winter adaptation. Everyone, regardless of status or origin, developed techniques for enduring the psychological challenges of winter confinement. As the morning progresses, the storm's impact becomes more evident. A small leak develops in one corner of the roof, creating a steady drip that requires positioning a wooden bucket to catch the moisture. Two men climb into the roof structure to assess the damage from inside using rushlights to examine the layers of thatch and supporting beams. Ice damming diagnosis 1. Identifying a common winter structural problem. Snow melts from Herat, refreezes at the edge, forces water back under the thatch. This technical analysis, pinpointing both symptom and mechanism, demonstrates the sophisticated building knowledge Vikings applied to their seemingly simple structures. They understood not just construction, but thermodynamics, water behavior, and material interactions across temperature gradients. The immediate repair involves carefully inserting additional thatch material from the inside, creating channels for water to flow properly rather than pull and penetrate. This delicate work requires specialized knowledge of roof construction and water management. Another example of the technical sophistication underlying Viking survival. While the men work on the roof repair, your grandmother organizes a different storm activity, medicine making. The enforced indoor time provides opportunity for processing healing substances that normally receive attention only when outdoor work is impossible. Bring the birch bark collected last week. She instructs you. We'll prepare more fever remedy while we have good fire heat. The medicine-making process involves multiple participants in a small production line. Children strip and sort the bark. Younger adults grind it using stone mortars. Elders supervise the mixing with other ingredients. Honey, certain dried fungi rendered fat in precise proportions, determined by generations of observation and testing. Not too fine. Your grandmother corrects a girl grinding too enthusiastically. Medicine enters the body slowly. Too fine, it works too quickly, then disappears. This pharmaceutical knowledge, understanding how particle size affects absorption rates, represents sophisticated medical science developed through empirical observation rather than formal study. The Vikings might not have understood the biochemistry, but they recognized the practical effects and developed appropriate techniques. The priest observes this medicine preparation with obvious interest. Your methods resemble those in our monastery healing house, he comments, though we add prayers to the medicines. We have words too, responds your grandmother without defensiveness. Different words, same purpose. The body doesn't mind which gods are thanked if the medicine works. This exchange exemplifies the practical religious accommodation common in Norse transitional Christianity. Effectiveness trumped doctrinal purity in matters of health and survival. The theological boundaries that would harden in later centuries remained permeable in this frontier context. As the medicine production continues, your father gathers the men for storm damage assessment and planning. Using a rough sketch drawn in the hearth ashes, he maps the longhouse and outweedings, marking areas of concern and prioritizing post-storm inspection and repair. The animal barn roof was weakened in the last storm, he reminds everyone. That's our first check when wind allows. The smokehouse and storage buildings come next. This systematic approach, establishing clear priorities and sequences for post-crisis recovery, demonstrates the organized thinking that enabled Viking communities to bounce back quickly from winter challenges. Nothing was left to chance or individual initiative. Collective action followed established protocols refined through experience. By midday, the storm's character changes. The sustained howl transforms into rhythmic gusting, periods of relative calm punctuated by intense wind surges. This pattern typically indicates a storm's transitional phase rather than its end, a meteorological. Understanding the Vikings had developed through generations of observation. Eye rotation explains your father to the younger children who have noticed the change. The storm center passes. We get calm. Then the back edge hits with new direction. This weather knowledge, recognizing the circular structure of winter storm systems, represented sophisticated meteorological understanding developed without modern instrumentation or formal science. Vikings read storms through sound, pressure changes, wind shifts, and cloud patterns, creating mental models that predicted behavior with remarkable accuracy. The midday meal reflects storm conditions, substantial, warm, and deliberately comforting. Hot stew featuring preserved meat and root vegetables provides not just nutrition, but psychological reassurance. The familiar flavors and aromas create continuity with normal times, while the meal's heartiness acknowledges the increased caloric needs during cold stress. Extra portion for roof workers directs your mother, recognizing the additional energy expenditure of those who performed repairs in the colder roof space. This calorie management, adjusting food distribution based on specific energy outputs, represented another aspect of the precise resource allocation that winter survival required. After the meal, the storm's predicted second phase arrives. The wind direction shifts noticeably, now coming from the northwest rather than northeast. The sound changes accordingly, finding new gaps and creating different resonances within the structure. Snow continues falling heavily, visible through the partially cleared smoke hole as near horizontal sheets driven by the powerful gusts. No outside movement until morning, decides your father after assessing the conditions. We secure what we have and wait. This restraint, knowing when action becomes counterproductive, characterized Viking survival wisdom. Heroic effort at the wrong moment didn't demonstrate courage, but foolishness. Recognizing when to conserve energy rather than expend it was as important as knowing when to act decisively. With outdoor activities impossible, the longhouse transitions to indoor winter work. Every available space becomes a production area for essential items that can be created or repaired during confinement. The scene resembles a small factory with different stations dedicated to specialized tasks. Near the main door, two men work on fishing equipment, checking nets for damage, repairing broken sections, and crafting new bone hooks designed specifically for ice fishing. Their movements are methodical and practiced, requiring minimal verbal communication as they perform tasks refined through countless repetitions. The bone must be cured properly, explains one man to a watching boy. Too fresh and it breaks under fish weight. Too old and it won't hold shape for carving. This material knowledge, understanding how bone aging affects structural properties, exemplifies the deep craft expertise that underpinned Viking survival technology. They weren't simply using available materials, but optimizing them through sophisticated processing techniques. At another station, women work with leather and fur, preparing materials for spring clothing production. The winter timing is deliberate. Materials prepared now will be ready for sewing when light improves and outdoor work resumes. The planning horizon extends months ahead with each season's activities, supporting the next in a continuous cycle. This seal skin needs extra softening, demonstrates a woman to her apprentice. See how it resists the bone folder, too stiff for watertight seams. The technical assessment focuses on specific material properties required for functional performance. Viking clothing wasn't merely decorative, but engineered for survival in harsh conditions. Waterproof seams in seafaring gear could mean the difference between life and death when spring fishing resumed. You find yourself drawn to a different activity station, wood carving. The visiting priest has produced small tools from his travel pouch and is demonstrating decorative techniques to several interested observers. His skill is evident in the precise cuts and flowing patterns emerging from simple wood pieces. Each cut follows the grain, he explains, showing how his knife works with rather than against the wood's natural structure. The wood tells you where it wants to be shaped. This approach, respecting material properties rather than forcing predetermined forms, resonates with the Viking craft philosophy. Despite religious differences, fundamental craft wisdom transcended cultural boundaries, creating common ground between Norse and Christian traditions. The priest notices your interest and offers a small piece of wood and a spare knife. Try, he encourages. Your hands seem suited to detail work. The simple observation reinforces previous comments about your potential aptitude for craftsmanship without explicit discussion. Adults have been noticing and nurturing your natural inclinations, a community-wide approach to talent development that characterized Viking education. As you attempt to replicate the demonstrated technique, the priest offers occasional guidance, not taking over, but suggesting small adjustments to grip or angle. The emerging pattern isn't perfect, but shows promise, earning approving nods from both the priest and passing household members. He has good hands, comments your father, pausing briefly to observe. Like his grandfather, this casual reference connects your emerging skill to family lineage, placing individual development within the context of intergenerational knowledge transmission. Viking identity wasn't purely individual, but linked to family capacities and contributions to communal survival. The afternoon passes in productive activity. Despite the storm's continuing assault, the longhouse functions as a self-contained survival system with every person contributing according to ability and need. Age and gender roles exist, but remain flexible with skill and aptitude, often outweighing traditional divisions when necessity demands. By late afternoon, the storm shows signs of weakening. The wind's voice changes from howl to moan, with longer periods of relative calm between gusts. The quality of light through the smoke hole suggests clearing conditions approaching, though snow continues falling steadily. We'll need snow clearing teams at first light, your father plans, already organizing the next day's recovery efforts, starting with paths to the animal barn and water source. This immediate pivot from weathering the storm to addressing its aftermath exemplifies the proactive Viking approach to winter challenges. No time was wasted on relief or complaint. Each crisis simply triggered the appropriate response protocol developed through generations of similar experiences. As evening approaches, the storm's retreat allows for the day's first outdoor excursion, a brief but necessary trip to check the nearest outbuildings and retrieve fresh snow for water. Your father and another man prepare carefully, donning multiple layers and carrying guide ropes to prevent disorientation in the still limited visibility. Half a sandlass only, instructs your mother, referencing the simple timekeeper occasionally used for winter tasks. If not back, we send search. This precaution, establishing clear time limits for even simple outdoor excursions, reflected the serious respect Vikings maintained for winter conditions. Even experienced adults followed strict safety protocols that might seem excessive to modern observers, but ensured survival in unforgiving environments. The men returned safely within the allotted time, bringing both fresh snow and initial reports of storm impact. Their snow-caked appearance as they enter through the antechamber provides visual confirmation of the challenging conditions outside. Drifts to the roof on the north side, reports your father, removing his outer layers, path to the animal barn, completely filled in, but structure seems intact from what we could see. This preliminary assessment establishes priorities for tomorrow's clearing work. The buried paths to essential outbuildings will require immediate attention to restore normal function. The work will be physically demanding, but follows established patterns familiar to everyone. The evening meal preparation begins with this new information incorporated into planning. Tomorrow will require substantial energy expenditure for snow clearing, so tonight's food prioritizes sustaining nutrition. Preserved meat for protein, barley for complex carbohydrates, and rendered fat for slow-burning energy. Add extra fat to the children's portions, directs your grandmother. They clear snow with us tomorrow. This dietary adjustment, increasing specific nutrients based on anticipated physical demands, demonstrates the sophisticated nutritional understanding Vikings applied to winter survival. They recognized food as fuel and modified intake based on output requirements, maximizing efficiency from limited resources. The visiting priest joins mealtime conversations, sharing news and stories from his circuit of regional communities. His role as information carrier supplements his religious function, making him a valued visitor, regardless of individual spiritual alignment. The southern settlements report good ice fishing this winter, he mentions between bites. Perch running larger than usual in the deep lake holes. Such practical intelligence, specific fishing conditions in connected regions, would influence local fishing strategies and expectations. The information network created by travelers like the priest helped optimize resource harvesting across the North Settlement region, improving everyone's survival odds. As the meal concludes, the longhouse transitions to evening activities. The central fire is built up slightly higher than usual, a small luxury justified by the recent storm stress and tomorrow's anticipated work demands. The improved light and warmth creates an atmosphere conducive to socialization and knowledge sharing. Tell us about the southern churches, Father, requests one of the older men, initiating the evening's storytelling and information exchange. The priest obliges with descriptions of larger settlements and their wooden churches, buildings that represented significant community investment and technological accomplishment. His account focuses on architectural details rather than theological distinctions, emphasizing common ground rather than differences. The new church at Kaupang has supporting posts carved like our ancestral pillars. He describes Christian symbols mixed with traditional patterns, beautiful craftsmanship that honors both old skills and new faith. This cultural synthesis, traditional Norse aesthetics applied to Christian structures, characterize the pragmatic religious transition underway. Rather than sharp replacement, elements blended gradually, creating distinctive expressions that respected continuity while accommodating change. The conversation expands to include other community members, sharing news or stories from their own experiences. This evening exchange serves multiple functions: entertainment, education, social bonding, and practical information sharing. In a world without formal media, communal storytelling created both cultural continuity and adaptive information networks. As night deepens and the storm continues its gradual retreat, the longhouse prepares for sleep. Tomorrow will bring heavy physical demands as the community addresses storm damage and restores normal function to the farmstead. Rest becomes a priority with conversation diminishing and sleeping areas prepared methodically. The visiting priest joins evening prayers with those who follow Christian practices, while others observe different traditions or simply prepare for sleep without formal ritual. This religious coexistence, multiple practices within shared space, reflected the practical accommodation that characterized Norse transitional Christianity. We clear from the main door outward at first light. Your father reminds everyone as the longhouse settles. Age-ordered teams rotating work. Pace for endurance, not speed. These final instructions establish the framework for tomorrow's recovery effort. The approach emphasizes sustainability, maintaining steady effort rather than exhausting workers with initial intensity. Winter survival required energy management across extended time frames, not heroic, but unsustainable bursts. As you settle into your sleeping furs, physical weariness combines with mental stimulation from the day's varied activities. The storm continues retreating, its voice now a background murmur rather than dominant presence. The longhouse cacks occasionally as timbers adjust to changing wind pressure, but the sound is familiar and reassuring rather than concerning. Your thoughts drift to the small wood carving you began under the priest's guidance. Something about the process, working with natural material to create both beauty and function, resonates deeply. The potential future as a craftsman seems more tangible now, a path that might align with your natural aptitudes. Around you, family members settle into sleep positions refined through countless winter nights. Bodies arrange themselves for optimal heat sharing, with the youngest and oldest in the warmest central positions. The breathing rhythm of the entire household gradually synchronizes, a subtle but powerful example of the unconscious coordination that characterized Viking communal life. Outside, the storm leaves its mark on the landscape, transforming familiar terrain into new formations that will require adaptation. Inside, human resilience prepares for that adaptation with earned rest and practical planning. The cycle continues as it has for generations. Challenge and response. Nature's power and human adaptability in constant conversation. This is Viking winter. Not merely survived, but inhabited fully. Not just endured, but incorporated into the cycle that defines northern life. Not conquered, but negotiated with through generations of accumulated wisdom. Sleep comes easily despite the lingering storm sounds. Tomorrow brings its own challenges, but tonight within the sheltering longhouse, winter's grip loosens just enough for rest, and sometimes that's victory enough. Morning arrives with unexpected brightness. The storm has fully passed, leaving behind a transformed world bathed in brilliant sunlight. Through the smoke hole you glimpse a sky of perfect blue, a rare midwinter gift that lifts spirits throughout the longhouse. Sunday announces your grandmother with satisfaction, a good omen for clearing work. This simple observation carries cultural weight. In Norse understanding, weather patterns weren't merely physical phenomena, but communications from natural and supernatural forces. A clear sky following difficult days suggested divine favor, practical encouragement to tackle the challenging work ahead. The longhouse stirs to life with renewed energy. The mood shifts noticeably from storm-bound endurance to recovery action. Breakfast is substantial but quick. No time for lingering when daylight is precious, and outdoor work extensive. Remember the system your father instructs as people prepare for snow-clearing work pairs. Regular rotation. No single person stays outside until exhaustion. This structured approach to recovery work, emphasizing sustainable pacing rather than heroic individual effort, reflected the Viking understanding that winter survival required consistent collective action rather than isolated feats of strength. You're paired with your cousin for the first clearing shift. Together you don appropriate outdoor clothing, multiple wool layers, waterproof outer garments and protective coverings for hands and feet. The process is methodical, with experienced adult checking younger workers' preparations to ensure adequate protection. Mittens, not finger gloves, corrects your mother, swapping your chosen hand coverings for a warmer option. Fingers together stay warmer than fingers apart. This practical knowledge, understanding how body heat conservation works in extreme conditions, came from generations of winter experience. Vikings didn't simply endure cold. They developed sophisticated strategies to work effectively within it. The first step outside takes your breath away, not just from cold, but from the visual impact. The familiar farmstead landscape has vanished. Replaced by an alien terrain of sweeping white sculptures, wind-carved snow formations create drifts taller than a man, completely bearing smaller structures and transforming pathways into deep trenches. Thor's hammer, mutters your cousin, momentarily overwhelmed by the transformation. The priest joining the clearing work without hesitation offers his own perspective. God's canvas, he suggests, finding beauty in the challenge before them. Work begins immediately following the established protocol. The main door area receives first attention, with teams widening the narrow path initially created during the morning's first tentative excursion. Wooden shovels specifically designed with broad blades for snow movement cut into the packed drifts systematically. You quickly discover that snow removal isn't simply brute labor, but technical skill. Different snow types require different approaches. The light powdery surface layer can be brushed aside efficiently. The wind-packed middle layer requires firm shovel strokes at the correct angle. The bottom layer, compressed by weight, sometimes needs braking before removal. Cart blocks from the compressed snow demonstrates an older worker. They hold shape for building windbreaks later. This resourceful approach turning the problem excess snow into a solution. Building material exemplified Viking pragmatism. Challenges weren't simply overcome, but transformed into opportunities through creative adaptation. The work rotation functions smoothly with teams cycling between outdoor clearing and indoor recovery periods. This prevents cold injury while maintaining steady progress on essential pathways. First priority goes to the animal barn access, where livestock held through the storm need immediate attention. Animals first, then water access, then roof clearing, recites your father, reinforcing the priority sequence. Storage buildings last unless damage is spotted. This organized approach, addressing needs in survival priority order, demonstrated the systematic thinking that underpinned Viking winter resilience. Nothing was random. Everything followed protocols refined through generations of experience. When your first work shift ends, you return to the longhouse with flushed cheeks and tired arms. The contrast between outdoor brilliance and indoor dimness temporarily blinds you. The warmth feels wonderful after the intense cold, though you know better than to approach the fire immediately. Too rapid temperature change brings its own dangers. Slow warming reminds your grandmother, directing you to remove outer layers gradually, rather than rushing to the hearth. Let the blood return to fingers and toes naturally. This medical knowledge, understanding peripheral circulation recovery, represented sophisticated physiological awareness developed through observation rather than formal study. Vikings recognized cold injury patterns and developed preventive protocols based on empirical evidence. As the morning progresses, the farmstead gradually re-emerges from its snow burial. Essential pathways become navigable, though bordered by snow walls taller than a child. The animal barn, once reached, reveals no significant damage beyond minor roof leakage, already resolving as interior heat rises. The visiting priest works alongside everyone else, his religious status creating no exemption from necessary labor. When his rotation brings him inside, he uses rest periods to continue the wood-carving demonstration begun during the storm, creating small but beautiful objects from simple materials. In my homeland village, he explains while working, winter carvings became family treasures, simple wood transformed by patience and skill. This cultural sharing connecting Norse experience to other northern peoples' winter adaptations created bonds that transcended religious or political differences. The shared challenge of winter survival united diverse communities in practical respect for each other's solutions. By midday, the critical recovery work has progressed significantly. Pathways to essential structures have been cleared. Livestock have been tended, their confined quarters cleaned and resupplied with fodder. Water access has been restored through strategic snow melting rather than attempted stream clearing. Another example of working with winter conditions rather than fighting them directly. The midday meal brings everyone together briefly, providing necessary caloric replenishment and opportunity to coordinate afternoon efforts. The food is simple but energy-dense. Preserved meat, grain porridge enriched with fat and dried fruits reconstituted in warm water. Every element serves specific nutritional purposes, addressing the high energy demands of cold weather physical labor. Good progress, assesses your father. Afternoon focus shifts to roof clearing and structure inspection. This transition from ground-level pathway clearing to elevated structural work follows logical sequence. Basic access and animal welfare established first. Then attention to building integrity that might affect longer-term security. The roof clearing represents more specialized work involving greater risk and technical skill than pathway shoveling. Teams are reconfigured with the most experienced workers handling the elevated tasks. You're assigned to a ground support role moving cleared snow away from building foundations and monitoring for falling ice. Watch the southeast eave carefully, instructs the team leader. Ice damming there could release suddenly. This safety awareness, identifying specific hazards rather than general cautions, reflected the precision of Viking risk management. Experience had taught which roof sections developed dangerous ice formations and under what conditions they might fall. As afternoon advances, the recovery work expands to include damage assessment and minor repairs. Several storage buildings show signs of storm impact. A door torn from leather hinges, roof corner thatch displaced by wind, a support post leaning slightly from snow load pressure. Each issue is addressed methodically with repairs prioritized by structural importance and weather vulnerability. Nothing is left for later that might compromise survival resources. Unlike modern home maintenance, which often defers non-critical repairs, Viking winter damage control was immediate and comprehensive. Even small openings become large problems, explains a man repairing a seemingly minor gap in a storeroom wall. Winter finds every weakness. This understanding that small vulnerabilities quickly escalate in harsh conditions underpinned the Viking approach to maintenance. Preventive attention to minor issues prevented catastrophic failures later, when resources for major repairs might be unavailable. By late afternoon, the recovery effort transitions from emergency response to normal winter functioning. The basic farmstead operation has been restored with essential structures secured and pathways established. The work rhythm shifts accordingly, moving from intense collective action to more individualized regular tasks. You find yourself assigned to ice fishing preparation, helping check equipment and prepare bait for tomorrow's expedition to the now accessible lake. The storm's passing has created ideal conditions for this crucial winter food gathering activity. Clear weather improves safety, while the barometric pressure changes often trigger increased fish activity. The perch will be hungry after the storm, predicts an experienced fisherman as you help organize line and hooks. They sense the pressure change and feed heavily afterward. This detailed understanding of fish behavior in relation to weather patterns represented sophisticated ecological knowledge developed through generations of observation. Vikings weren't simply opportunistic hunters, but studied naturalists who recognized complex relationships between environmental conditions and animal behaviors. As daylight begins fading, still limited in these mid-winter weeks, the community turns attention to evening needs. The priest, preparing to continue his journey tomorrow, helps with final organization of the carving tools he's been demonstrating during his stay. You have natural ability, he tells you, noting your progress with the simple decorative patterns. The wood responds to your hands. This encouragement, specific to observed aptitude rather than general praise, reflects the Viking approach to talent development. Young people received honest assessment of their capabilities, guiding them towards specializations that matched their natural inclinations and community needs. The evening meal preparation becomes a community activity with many hands contributing to create a slightly special feast acknowledging both the storm's passing and the priest's departure, while still using preserved winter stores. The meal incorporates variety and thoughtful combination that elevates it beyond basic sustenance. We add the dried cranberries tonight, decides your mother, authorizing use of a valued preserve typically reserved for special occasions. Good work deserves recognition. This balanced approach to resource use, maintaining strict conservation during crisis, while allowing a measured celebration during respite, characterized Viking winter management. Morale was recognized as a survival resource, alongside physical supplies requiring occasional investment, even during scarcity. As the community gathers for the evening meal, conversation flows more easily than during storm confinement. The shared accomplishment of effective recovery creates natural bonds, while the visiting priest's imminent departure prompts exchange of information and farewell sentiments. The Southern Church sends these, he says, producing small wooden crosses from his travel bag, simple carvings that nonetheless represent significant resource investment in wood and labor during winter. For those who wish them no obligation, This respectful offering, presented without pressure or expectation, exemplifies the diplomatic religious integration common in Norse transitional Christianity. Faith spread through relationship and cultural exchange, rather than force or demand, particularly in remote regions where community cooperation remained essential for survival. Some family members accept the crosses with genuine appreciation. Others decline politely but without hostility. The moment passes without tension, demonstrating the practical religious pluralism that characterized many Viking communities during this period. Survival cooperation transcended theological differences that might become divisive in more secure environments. As the meal concludes, the evening transitions to quieter activities, appropriate for the day's physical exertion and tomorrow's anticipated work. Unlike the animated storytelling of storm confinement, tonight's atmosphere encourages restful conversation and reflective sharing. Your grandmother initiates a different kind of knowledge transmission, winter wisdom sharing. Rather than dramatic sagas or practical instruction, she invites contemplative observation about winter's deeper meanings. This tradition, occurring at specific points in the winter cycle, encouraged philosophical reflection alongside practical survival. What does winter teach that summer cannot? She asks, posing the traditional opening question to the gathered community. The responses come slowly, thoughtfully, often after considerable reflection. There is no rush, no competition to speak first or most eloquently. The conversation unfolds like the winter itself, unhurried, deep with pauses that hold meaning rather than emptiness. Winter teaches patience, offers an older man. Summer rewards immediate action. Winter rewards careful waiting. Winter teaches truth, suggests another. Summer allows pretense and decoration. Winter strips everything to essentials. Winter teaches interdependence, adds your mother. Summer permits the illusion of self-sufficiency. Winter reveals our need for others. The observations continue building a composite wisdom that connects practical survival experience to deeper human insights. This wasn't abstract philosophy, but embodied understanding drawn from lived experience rather than theoretical contemplation. When your turn comes, you consider carefully before speaking. Winter teaches appreciation, you offer. Summer's abundance can be taken for granted. Winter's scarcity makes us value what remains. Your contribution receives thoughtful nods, particularly from the visiting priest, who recognizes the universal truth that transcends specific cultural or religious frameworks. This winter wisdom tradition created common ground where diverse perspectives could converge around shared human experience. The priest adds his own observation when invited. Winter teaches humility. He suggests summer allows the illusion of human dominance over nature. Winter restores proper perspective. This contribution, respecting the traditional format while adding complementary insight, demonstrates cultural integration rather than replacement. The Christian perspective enriches rather than contradicts the Norse wisdom tradition, finding harmony rather than conflict. As evening deepens toward night, the longhouse prepares for sleep. The day's physical exertion combines with emotional release following the storm's passage to create profound tiredness throughout the community. Bodies that worked hard in cold conditions now seek restoration through rest. The visiting priest joins evening Christian prayers with those who follow that tradition, while others observe different practices or simply prepare for sleep without formal ritual. The longhouse accommodates this diversity without tension, creating space for multiple expressions within shared shelter. We fish at first light, reminds your father as people settle onto sleeping platforms. The lake ice will be perfect after the storm, swept clear of snow by wind in many places. This forward focus, already organizing tomorrow's essential activities, exemplifies the continuous planning that characterized Viking winter survival. Each day connected to the next, in an unbroken chain of resource management and opportunity optimization. As you arrange your sleeping furs, your grandmother pauses beside your platform, speaking softly to avoid disturbing others already drifting towards sleep. "You did well today," she says simply. "Your grandfather would be proud of your work and your words." This intergenerational connection linking your efforts to ancestral approval represents the temporal continuity that defined Viking identity. Individual actions gained meaning through their place in familial and community lineage, connecting past, present, and future through shared values and adaptive knowledge. Sleep approaches swiftly after the day's exertion. Your last conscious thoughts drift between practical anticipation of tomorrow's fishing and reflective appreciation of the winter wisdom shared tonight. Both dimensions, practical survival and meaningful understanding, coexist naturally in the Viking winter experience. Outside, the cleared farmstead rests under brilliant stars, the temperature plummeting in the storm's aftermath. Inside, the longhouse holds its inhabitants in sheltered community, bodies sharing warmth as naturally as minds share knowledge. This was Viking winter survival. Not merely enduring until spring, but inhabiting the cold months fully with practical skill and thoughtful presence. Not just surviving winter, but incorporating it into the complete cycle that defined northern life. From your warm, safe bed in the modern world, this ancient winter wisdom still resonates. The Vikings faced winter's challenges not without technology, but with community, knowledge, and adaptation that modern societies sometimes forget. Their lessons speak across centuries: resilience through cooperation, security through preparation, meaning through acceptance of natural cycles. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps there's comfort in knowing that humans have always faced challenges through connection and creativity. That warmth has always been found not just in fire, but in shared purpose. That darkness has always eventually yielded to light. Winter still comes, but so does spring. Rest now knowing that cycles continue, challenges pass, and human ingenuity endures just as it always has.